Welcome back to another episode of the Supercar Killer M3 presented by Turn 14 Distribution. Today we're finally going to reveal to you what plans we have to make Supercar Killer power with this thing. You didn't think we were going to make supercar power levels without one of these spoolie boys right here, did you? If you did think that, you were wrong. We are going boost on this. I don't think that's a big surprise to anybody. And this is, of course, a Garrett GTX 3584 RS, one of their most advanced turbos, and it supports power between 500 and 1,000 horsepower. In fact, we've seen this turbo in action on NV Auto's STI drift car, which has a 2JZ and this turbo on it. They made like 750 at the wheel, which would be about 900 crank horsepower. If you don't know the difference between wheel horsepower and crank horsepower, go and educate yourself, fool. But in the meantime, we will tell you a little bit more about this turbo. It has some very advanced aerodynamics going on with the turbine wheel here, which is, by the way, made of Inconel, a very high-tech material. And it's really the aerodynamics of this wheel where the power and performance come with this turbo. And it actually allows it to perform more on par with like a GT40 rather than a GT30 frame. So this being a relatively small frame turbo can support a lot of power. This turbo is stuffed full of the good stuff. It will definitely support the kind of power that we plan to make with this car to go supercar hunting. So the question really is, what motor are we going to bolt this onto? Do we bolt it onto the S54 that's in there now, which would mean refreshing and probably fortifying that engine? Or do we pull that thing out and put something a little stronger in there? I think some of you guys already know what's coming, so kind of cut to the time lapse of us pulling that motor out of the hole.
Progress has been made. We've got the entire front end off, and I've got to commend BMW for doing that. Makes this job much easier to pull this motor. Look at all the space we have. However, it hasn't been without a few headaches, and the biggest one right now is our power steering cooler line. These fittings here usually will rotate and you can pop them off if you push down on them, but they are frozen solid, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm gonna do here. And can I call your attention to here? I'm kind of glad we didn't drive this motor or drive this car and rip on it, because look at this. This belt looks like it is about to fail here, and the alternator is really crusty and whatnot. So it's a good thing we kind of just got to it, because that is going to need a bit of a refresh. All right, I think it is time we soldier ahead here. We've got to do the drive shaft, we've got to do the exhaust, we got to loosen everything underneath, and then we can finally extract this beast. Man, we're sitting down here because we're pretty exhausted.
Yeah, that was a job. That was a job. It wasn't terrible though. I mean, it's not the worst engine in the world to take out, but we seemed to hit a roadblock there trying to get out of the engine bay without dropping the front subframe?
Yeah, like the common procedure for this is to drop the subframe. We did that with our convertible M3. However, this time around, we just wanted to see if you could pull it without dropping the subframe, because we want to leave the subframe in so this chassis can be a roller. However, the oil pan, the sump is just so big in this area here that it just doesn't clear.
Doesn't seem to want to clear.
It doesn't clear the steering shaft. So
yeah,
what we had to do is loosen the 4 bolts, loosen the steering shaft, and then drop the subframe that way. But once we did that, it came out very, very easy. So I'd say I'd say that's the preferred method. Dropping the subframe with everything for me was just as cumbersome with like the suspension and having to take all that stuff off anyways. So
yeah,
either way, we've learned something.
We have.
Every time we do something here at Speed Academy, there's a little bit of a roadblock.
For sure. Even though we have done this fairly recently,
yeah,
still a few moments where we're like,
yeah,
how do we do that again?
Yeah.
And I'd like to mention that we have some mouse poo in the throttle bodies. You were saying that just fell in there.
Yeah, that fell in when I was pulling the whole
thing off there.
Yeah,
so that may be something that needs to get cleaned up.
Oh, I think we're gonna have to spray this sucker.
Give it a good power wash.
Give it a good power wash.
Yeah. Make sure we get water in all these connectors real good.
Yeah, because spoiler, if you haven't already guessed, we're not gonna be using this motor.
Yes.
And it's a tough thing because I really love this motor. I think the S54 is truly a special engine.
It is.
But turbocharging it, I did a lot of research, and it's not that it's not possible. It really is. There's a lot of different options. I shouldn't say a lot. There's some options out there, and the options that are out there seem to work well. I haven't seen many being used on the racetrack. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of street car guys rocking. I think there was like a Horsepower Freaks one. Anyways, a couple other turbo kits. But what it comes down to is the cost of us having to refresh this engine. After we did it on the convertible, it really does nickel and dime you to death. And going boost would mean, to me, I would really want to fortify this motor, which would mean kind of rebuilding the whole thing.
Yeah.
And after we crunched the numbers, we were like, man, it's going to get pretty expensive. What other options are out there? And we're not going to ruin the surprise yet for what motor we're using. But we'll just tell you, once you get into it, you look at it like for $10,000, you can probably build this to be turbocharged, but you're not going to be building the engine.
And I think ultimately it's also a case of not wanting to repeat ourselves. Like we just built one of these. Like, do we want to go through that whole process again? I know I don't want to. So when we really looked at like from a content creator standpoint too, it's like let's do something different. It's just more exciting to us to drop something different in this car than to kind of redo what we've already done. So this whole like Getrag SMG system is really intriguing.
I know. I was blown away when you start looking at it and you see all the lines and plumbing. Like it is a manual gearbox. Our goal here is going to be to take this gearbox, remove all the SMG components, do a little bit of machine work to get some detents in there, and this will act as a manual gearbox. So we're going to reuse this box but convert it over to be a true manual.
This puppy will go on the shelf, and maybe now's the time to show them some options that we're considering.
Oh baby.
Contestant number 1 is this squeaky clean K20. Look at this thing. It is just minty fresh. And if you guys know anything about K-Series motors, they can make a ton of power, both NA and with boost. In fact, like our buddy Will O'Young at PZ Tuning is pretty much setting time attack records around the world with a K-Series motor. He's beaten up supercar lap times by a large margin, but it's an extreme example, clearly. Nevertheless, we could build this motor, put some boost into it, and make supercar type power numbers with it. There's no question we could do that, but it does seem a little on the small side for a car and chassis of this size and this weight. So really it's not the right motor for this application. At least I don't consider it to be. There's probably someone out there who's put a K-Series motor in an E46. I'm sure the internet will tell us if that's the case or not, but to me it's maybe not the right choice. It'd be a very high strung, like high stress motor to get it up to the power level we need. So I think there are better solutions, but you may see this thing going into something in the future.
Our next possible choice, and one of my personal favorite engines, the Nissan RB26 DTT.
Woo.
This is that of Godzilla, an R33 GTR, and it makes great power. It is a very capable engine of reaching the horsepower goals that we have. However, it has the hot side, so the turbo side, on the opposite side of what the M3 has. So it would require a lot more engineering and work to figure out how to mount up this motor in this car, specifically because of that. And I also don't necessarily love these for reliability. They're pretty awesome motors, but they do tend to have a little bit of a bad rap with electronics going bad and whatnot. So overall, this is a good option, but not for us. Our final contender here, and no surprise to many of you, is Toyota's 2JZ GTE engine, arguably Toyota's best engine ever built, at least in my opinion. And this is what we are going to be swapping into the M3. That probably comes as no surprise to a lot of you. The main reason why we chose it is we think it is the most reliable method of making 700 to 800 horsepower without having to crack the block, and for kind of a fraction of the price of what we would spend rebuilding that S54. So it is an absolute bargain. We bought this motor for 3,500 bucks from J-Spec Auto in Virginia. The Benz over at Gears and Gasoline have been using them for a lot of their JDM import stuff, so we decided to give them a try, and so far I am liking what I see. This motor is in absolutely mint shape. Aside from this being cracked during shipping, this thing is mint. Like, yeah, look at the front. There's no rust. Fresh. It is super clean, so it's certainly had a proper shampoo done to it. So I am beyond excited.
We got this cool blow-off valve,
that's
dude.
Right, DP.
Look at that.
This is like an old school HKS blow-off valve as a bonus. Oh, there, I just tore the rubber off there, but we're not going to be using this. So
you can buy it from Pete, though.
No, you can't. No, that's going to go in the stash for something. Okay. You know, come on, we got to put it in the stash. So. Anyways, I'm super excited to be using this engine. I think it's going to be absolutely badass in this car. It's kind of my ideal combo. 2JZ sounds so good, makes great power. So the next step is what we're going to do is clean up the transmission, take that whole SMG unit off of it, off of the BMW one, and then we're going to show you how we're going to mate that to this 2JZ.
Well, what was supposed to be a quick engine detail turned into a full-on undercarriage and engine bay detail on this thing. And maybe detail's not the right word. We power washed it, basically sprayed it with some engine degreaser, let it soak for a few minutes, and power washed it. And look at that mess.
Yeah, wow.
That is disgusting. That is, what's this car have? Like 260,000 kilometers on it? That's what happens to a car when it lives that long. But it is looking way better. By no means eat off it clean, but it's a good start. So I think now we will finally get to pulling off that Getrag and fitting it up to the 2J and showing you how that all works. Whew, look at this piece of aluminum artwork, everyone. This is from PMC Motorsports in Europe, and they make this beautiful conversion kit to allow you to use the Getrag 6-speed with the 2JZ. You can even see they've like machined the little details in here that say it's for a 2JZ. I should mention that this friction surface is replaceable. You can see it actually bolts in from the back side.
Look at that thing though, man.
It's a piece of work, isn't it? It's just gorgeous. And I should also mention that this spigot here in the middle puts your pilot bearing in the correct position for the input shaft on the transmission. So some adapters force you to use an extension on that input shaft, but this allows you just to use the factory input shaft, so no weird fiddlingness there that goes on there. It comes with all the hardware you need for the installation, including this little shifter pivot, which is plastic on these gearboxes and fail. We replaced that with a metal one in the drift car, and it's nice to see they include that here. So very well thought out. And as part of the kit, obviously, it comes with this adapter plate, which, look at the machine work on this. PMC, it's got all the engine codes or tranny codes on there, 2JZ. It is a piece of work, and my God, it's super lightweight too. This notch is obviously for the starter, so that'll help me orient it, because otherwise...
And we can use the BMW starter, which is awesome.
Yeah, it works seamlessly with the factory starter. So this is about as easy as it gets as far as adapting a gearbox to a motor. We do, of course, need a clutch that goes in between the two. We have ordered a custom one from Spec. They're making us a Stage 3 Plus. They've made kits for this combination of parts before. I don't think it's listed on their website, but if you do want one, you can special order it from them. We'll put a link in the description for that. Look at that, everybody. This is all the aluminum in the world happening here, and we should say this flywheel just pops on there perfectly. They've got that tolerance really nicely done. We're not gonna bother like bolting the flywheel on, because obviously with the clutch and stuff coming, we don't wanna go that far down this road. We just wanna show you what it looks like on the motor here. Now we'll just quickly pop this off and fit up the transmission, and you can see how it bolts on. Boom, just like that. It's bolted up, or at least sort of bolted up. We didn't put all the bolts in. We just wanted to show you quickly how this all goes together. And by the way, I misspoke earlier saying that you use the BMW starter. You actually use the 2J starter, and you need an automatic flex plate, which we don't have. You need that flex plate for the starter to engage onto, so we'll go ahead and get that flex plate. We do have a 2J starter, so this gives you just a quick idea of how this all goes
DP,
together.
look at it. It's like it was meant to be.
It really was. We were just talking about drive shaft lengths and whether or not we're gonna have to shorten up the drive shaft or not. That's all stuff that we'll deal with once this thing is mounted in the car. And speaking of mounting this in the car, we'll discuss that momentarily. But first, let's pull off this gigantic mess of a twin turbo setup and show you what we're doing for that single turbo that we led off this episode with. Look at this murder zone on the floor, everybody. We made an absolute mess of removing those stock.
Wow, we didn't need to save it.
No.
God, what a nightmare to take that off, right?
I was asking you if this is worth anything, and you're like, no, nobody wants to buy this stuff.
Nah, people don't.
We just kind of hacked it off there as quickly as we could, although it still took a long time because there's a ton of stuff there. So
very cool 90s technology, but definitely not something that we want to mess with.
No, that's all going away. And as you can see, we are going with a very simple cast, almost log style manifold from a company called Spa Turbos. They make cast manifolds like this for a whole bunch of different applications, and this one is only like 350 bucks.
Yeah, kind of crazy.
So really good value. And obviously the reason we went with this style, say, versus a long tube is for space reasons. There's just not a lot of room in that engine bay. So we wanted to make this as compact a setup as we can. And we also know that these cast manifolds are incredibly durable. So yeah, they don't flow as well as a long tube one, but I think we can still make plenty of power.
However, they technically say that flows 1,000 horsepower.
1,000 horsepower.
That's what it says, yes.
Yeah, and I think NV Auto's running this manifold on their 2J
that's correct.
STI, and they're making 750 with this exact spoolie boy that I showed you earlier today. Oh, spoolie boy, you feel good on my face. And it's gonna bolt on like this. Obviously, we're gonna convert it to V-band so that she will just clamp on there happily for quick and easy removal. And it's compact, obviously, and this turbo is obviously relatively compact too, so exciting stuff. And I think the next step would be to figure out how to mount this engine in that engine bay. And we would love to do this ourselves, wouldn't we, Pete? I mean, we got all the fabrication tools and everything here to do it ourselves, but
many long months.
Frankly, it would be a long process, wouldn't it? And you guys on the internet are always like, hurry up, finish the project, make it faster, we want another episode. So because of you guys, we're outsourcing this to NV Auto, who of course are very skilled at this kind of stuff, have done 2J swaps into a bunch of different cars. So we'll take it over to Vin. He will figure out how to mount the engine in the bay, and then we will finish it sort of from that point. So he'll kind of take care of like the hard mounting portion of it, and then we'll take it from there. And of course, we'll also show you some of the action at NV Auto while this is getting mounted up. So tons more excitement to come on this thing before old Spoolie Boy here goes to the dyno and makes us that supercar crushing horsepower. How do I make turbo noises here, Peter? Is it...